Another very common thing that's brought up on Reddit is I want to do martial arts, but I'm scared about, and then list of injuries. Generally speaking, it's head damage. So people are risky of doing boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, karate because they don't want to get hit in the head because they've heard that there's a risk of brain damage and head injury. Same thing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, they hear wrestling, they hear issues of people hurting their backs or dislocating joints or breaking bones, and they're weighing up the risk or trying to avoid it. And here's what I'll say on it as someone who's done it for his lifetime and couldn't live without it, quite frankly, is it is a risk. It's not I don't listen to anyone who's going to tell you that there's no risk or it's a very negligible risk of brain damage, very negligible risk of breaking a bone. It's a very real risk. But similar to, I guess the closest thing I could akin it to would be motorcycle riders. Motorcyclists are very aware that it's probably the most dangerous form of transportation, right? If you get hit in a car, there's a chance you'll get some whiplash. But more times than not, unless it's really fast, you're going to come out okay of a car accident. We're talking, a bump in the road, whatever. The problem with motorbikes is if you're lucky, you come out with serious injury. You know what I mean? If you're lucky, you come out with broken bones and your skin ripped off. But if you're unlucky, you die. And that's a real rough thing to absorb. So you got to think, if they understand these risks, they know that this is the case, why do they still do it? And it must be, and this is again linking it back to what we're talking about with the martial arts, it must be that the juice is worth the squeeze, that the pleasure derived is worth the risk taken. And this is what it comes down to me. As much as I'm aware that being hit in the head is not a sensible thing to do, and less sensible the older you get, I know for me personally that my existence without it, as in its entirety, in any form, would be an existence that I'm not interested in finding out about. And maybe I'm wrong for feeling that way. Maybe I should understand that there's more to life and that it's not worth the risk. But that's my personal decision to make. Similar, I guess, again, to smoking. People who smoke understand the risks. They understand lung cancer. You don't need to tell them. You don't need to ask them if they know what it's doing to their bodies. They know, they're fully aware. But the pleasure they derive from it, for them, at that moment, is worth what you're doing. The other thing I'll say is, on this, is I think where it is a sport where the objective of the sport is to injure people, as in to win at boxing, kickboxing, it means you are successfully battering people with your hands and feet. To win at jiu-jitsu, you are successfully manipulating people's joints or depriving them of oxygen or blood to important areas. So understandably, the association with it is that it's violent and damaging to the body. But how many football players do we see who get tackled and break their ankle or badly sprain their ankle? How many rugby players do we see, American football players do we see who take a hit and get concussed? How many gymnasts do we see who fall off a beam funny and break a leg, break an arm, dislocate a shoulder? All sport comes with a level of risk. That's a given. And the higher you take your sport, as in the higher level you go with it, the more the level of that risk is increased. Mostly down to you're participating in the activity more often and therefore just pure purely statistically, you're more likely to encounter an injury, but also you're training and you're competing at a higher level of intensity. You're getting closer to the edge of what you are physically capable of doing, what your body, you're pushing your body to that edge from where performance is at its peak, but the risk of injury is also at the peak. Compile onto that, or compound onto that, the idea that the person is trying to injure you. I'm using that word kind of, in brackets, because they're not trying to injure you, but they're trying to win the fight. And by the nature of the sport in doing that, you're going to be causing and sustaining injuries. It's very real. It's an issue, but you have to weigh up how much it's worth it. My thing with it is, and this is a line I got from my old coach. I'm best friends, close friends with his son. We still talk about it all the time. A quote he loves to give, a quote he loves to share, and it comes from a guy who used to like to walk on tightropes. I say he used to like it like it's a casual thing. He was obsessed with walking on a tightrope without any rope support or anything to catch him, and he'd started doing crazy things like walking across buildings, walking across the Grand Canyon, all these things where if it went wrong and he fell, he was done, he was dead, he was gone. And in an interview with him, I believe at the time he was preparing to walk across the Twin Towers when they were still around, and he spoke in this, the interviewer asked him, you understand the risk of what you're doing. Why risk it? What is it worth it? And his answer was, life is on the wire and everything else is just waiting to get back on. And that sentence really encompasses what I'm trying to say here. For me, life is on the mats. Life is in the ring. Life is with the gloves on, and everything else is waiting to get back on. Now, this isn't fully true in the sense that, my wife, our time together is life. When we have children, that's going to be life. Time with family, life. But a huge part of my life, one of the wires of which I walk across, is this martial art wire. And everything else, the food shops, the driving around, the paying of the bills, all the admin you have to do in order to run a martial arts school, it's all done to serve the purpose of you being able to get back to doing the activity. People who ride motorbikes describe this euphoria, this high that they get from riding it that they can't get anywhere else. And that it's almost obsessive about when the next ride is, because they want to go back to that place. They want to go back and experience that thing, even with the complete understanding of the risks that they're undertaking for themselves and for their loved ones, because, you're going to put them through a traumatic experience of you being either terribly injured, disabled, or killed. Not to get too dark on it. But the alternative is that you don't do these activities, that you don't take any risks, that you become very risk adverse. And then I just think, well, what's the point? What's the point of life if we're going to go through it, wrapping ourselves up in bubble wrap and doing nothing with any risk? Nothing that can risk injuring us, hurting us, and even, yes, killing us. Because life is not about being this pristine, well-packaged, dead 100-year-old at the end. Life is about, we don't know how long we have. We don't have a true meaning, as in we're not born knowing exactly what our purpose is in life. We have to discover that on a personal level for ourselves, and that's going to wildly vary from one to the other. But what we can decide is, what we can figure out is, what do you love doing? And how can you spend as much of your time doing it as possible? A big part of why I teach martial arts is not because I love teaching. I do. But the real reason is I wanted to find a way to do martial arts more than I do anything else. And I tried to figure out, all right, so if I'm not fighting and competing anymore or getting paid to fight, what other avenues can I pursue to make an income to support myself and support my loved ones whilst doing this all the time? So then you look at teaching, online content, you start finding ways, not because you think that it's like I did not get into this industry for the money. You can make a lot of money. We've spoken before about McDojos and Bullshido and how if you really wanted to, you can manipulate your martial arts in order to make a lot of money. I try my best not to do that. I try to run my club as ethically as possible whilst considering myself and my loved ones are making a decent living. But it's never going to make me a millionaire. I'm never going to get rich off of doing this alone. But the kind of rich I'm going to get is I'm going to get rich in terms of my life experience, because I'm spending my short, unpredictable time on this planet doing the thing that I love to do. And if tomorrow I get head kicked and it disconnects my brain from my body and I fall down dead on the mat, I would be happier with that ending than I would with giving this up, walking out on the street and getting hit by a car. I would rather die on the mats. I don't want to die on the mats. I want to die an old man in my bed, in my sleep. Thank you very much. If you're listening up there, whoever you are, that's what I'll take. But alternatively, I'm okay with it because I don't want to do anything else with my time. I've gone on a real tangent with that one, but maybe that's what podcasts are about, right? Martial arts is inherently risky. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's very unlikely that you're going to do it for a lifetime and come out unscathed. Just to list it off, right? I have floaters in my eyes. So if I've got a big white softbox up here. If I look up into it and I move my eyes around, I can see little black dots floating around in my vision. Not loads, but there's a handful. When it first appeared, it was very annoying. My brain has adjusted to understand what they are, and I don't see them anymore unless I really actively pursue them and look for them. And that is bits of my retina, effectively the back of my eye, detaching and now floating around in the fluid of my eyeball. Yeah, that's from, I assume, because I had it very early on, head impact. I've dislocated my right shoulder enough times that I had to have full reconstructive surgery on it. It's great now, moves around all over the place. But at one point, I was just rolling over in my sleep and it was popping out of the socket. I have not mashed up knees, but I've got knee pains and knee issues. I've got ankle pains and ankle issues. I have no doubt in my mind that I'm due some hip pain issues, and I've got some back issues, and we're going to talk about that in another episode, scoliosis and martial arts. So if you've got scoliosis or you don't know what that word is and you're interested, we'll talk about that another day. I've got a lot of injuries through doing this sport, and when I look back on it, I wouldn't change a thing, because all the experiences, all the amazing people I've met, the way I've been able to look after my general health, in the sense of, I'm carrying a lot of injuries, but I consider myself very healthy. I eat well because of martial arts. It taught me about nutrition, and it gave nutrition a value in my life. I exercise regularly, not because I feel the need to exercise regularly, but because I love what I do, and what I do is exercise. So I get to do it all the time. It includes things like stretching, which we all should be doing, and martial arts kind of incentivizes that. It makes it part of the program. It includes things like meditation and breath work because it's part of the program. So I end up ticking a lot of wellness boxes. Hydration is another one. I end up ticking a lot of these wellness boxes off, not through having to actively pursue wellness, but through just doing the very thing that I do. It allows me to tick a lot of things off in terms of my own health and benefits regardless.